This is where I completely derailed the entire evening session. Hello everyone and welcome back to the DMSide. In today's video, we're going to find out exactly how the players are progressing through our Essentials kit of Dragon of Icespire Peak, but also how one moment of improvisation can really derail an entire night session of planning. Don't forget to like the video to help the channel out, subscribe if you'd like to keep up with our story, and comment down below, how is your story going and what story are you running right now? How a simple moment of DM improvisation can completely derail a campaign baffles me. At the start of the session, we picked up right where we left off. The group had successfully defeated the goblins and found the wagon of goods. They inspected it to make sure that it was exactly the actual one that they needed, to see if there were any goods that were taken, to see if anything that they needed to continue on before going back to Phandalin. Now, they had everything, and then they had a discussion about, well, do we take the 300 gold worth of wagon goods and go on our own merry adventure, or do we continue the story and go back to Phandalin? Luckily, most of the players through metagaming decided that yes, we would like to continue the story. Now, I did mention to them that they could do whatever they wanted really, and I'd be happy to go down to Waterdeep and start selling it and just start a Waterdeep campaign, or head up to Neverwinter and start a Tyranny of Dragons campaign, or wherever they wanted to go. But luckily they said they would like to continue this current story. So they picked up their wagon of goods and headed back to Phandalin. Once they got back to Phandalin, the sun was setting, night was falling, and most places were shutting up shop. So Bartha was already closed up and probably gone home. Harbin was most likely back at his place as well. The players decided, well, why don't we go to Bartha's because she offered us extra money, and then in the morning we'll go and see Harbin and say we've already given it back to her to collect both sources of income. Asking a few townsfolk around where Bartha lived, they managed to find her place and go exactly there. She opened up the door and she was in such a wonderful mood, very excited, happy that her goods had arrived safe and sound, and invited them in for tea. This is where I completely derailed the entire evening session. Once the players got into Bartha's, having tea, talking about how they found the wagon, how happy she was, and maybe if there were any other jobs around, she mentioned to them, where are my boys? My two sons who were bringing the wagon of goods to Phandalin. And it was like a sack of potatoes, like a hard rock, a brick hitting the ground, feeling it in the pit of my stomach where I went, what did I just say? Seeing it on my players' faces where they all went, we didn't even check the bodies of the two that had been killed by the goblins. So then they started talking and I started role-playing. We found out that apparently the two guards or the two people were her two kids and now they're dead. And on top of that, she has a third son called Ashton who lives in Neverwinter, who works as a blacksmith for the Neverwinter army, who normally comes down with them when they visit to get goods for the shop. But luckily this time he did not. And so they felt so bad that they didn't even bother to check the bodies, that they said to Bartha, just wait right here. We are going to go and actually just get the remains for you. And I was like, what is happening? I thought we were going to go have a long rest and you were going to go see Harbin in the morning and then you're going to pick up one of the 3 quests that I was prepped for today, and now we're going back to the woods to get some dead bodies. So they took the horses from Bartha's and they headed back through the night into the woods. Luckily, I actually kind of had this planned. Because if you remember back to, I believe, the first video, the original plan was that if they went in the night, there would be an owlbear there. Now, they've leveled up to level 2. They're not very weak anymore, but an owlbear is still very challenging. And so once they returned to the grove, there they saw an owlbear sleeping just by the remains. So it actually created this very interesting moment where they returned for another part of what I'd originally planned. Bubbles, the monk, decided to try and sneak around one side, with, for some reason, Janet the barbarian, who was blind, holding onto her tail so she could go with her, whereas the other 3, Tig the cleric, Rain the Paladin, and then Gobbleknock the other barbarian, thought we'll sneak around to the left-hand side and cause a distraction. Now, the problem with this is they don't have any stealth. One of them actually has disadvantage on stealth because of their armor, and so Bubbles gets about halfway around with Janet, who is still blind from the night, and all of a sudden the others are causing so much racket that the owlbear wakes up and just bellows this loud roar and is about to run over and start attacking the group that have gone to the other side. We roll initiative, Bubbles gets the highest, and then everyone else piles on after her, and she decides to run straight into the grove and start attacking this beast. Janet, now left completely blind, has no idea where Bubbles has gone and just hears this going on around her. It was extremely amusing. Whereas the other three can still see what's going on, and they look over and see Bubbles fighting this owlbear as she jumps with her quarterstaff, smacks it in the face and kicks it as well, and all of a sudden it turns around on its turn and rolls a nat 20 and pecks her with its beak so hard. Double damage, puts her right down, and now she's dying. And this is the first instance that this group has had to deal with characters dying, which was really, really funny and very, very interesting, but she was on her own. So the other three run in. Luckily, they surround the owlbear. They start wailing on it, dealing with its hit points. It starts lashing out at them. Rain the Paladin has Healing Word prepared, which is great, turns around and brings Bubbles up, and then also ducks over with a lay on hands. And eventually the group all together managed to defeat the owlbear, except Janet, who is still blind in the woods, not knowing what is going on, but is now moving towards the sound of battle. It was very entertaining. So they pick up the remains of the bodies and they bring them back to Bartha, and we end our session there. These are very short sessions, about usually 2 to 3 hours at best. So for them to get in some conversation, find out some information as to what's going on, depending on what they're asking, and then to get some battle in and some more travel time, we're just hitting that right amount of things to do in D&D. Ideally, I would really like to have a bit more time just so I could build some larger encounters, or have more multiple small encounters with some short rests along the way, so that way they can experience this idea of managing your equipment, managing your special abilities and things like that. But I'm sure we'll get into that as we go further on. So moving forward into next week's session, it's pretty much very similar to last week's plans, because I don't plan on derailing myself again. I hope that they're going to pick up Alphonse's ranch with the orcs, or there's the gnomes of Gnomengard for the crazy wizard hat, or there's the much longer journey bringing the goods all the way up to the Neverwinter Woods for Harbin Wester's brother, which could see them going to Neverwinter. What did I learn from this session? I learned that improvisation on the DM's part is really good as long as it's still within the theme of what is happening. This entire encounter was fun, but for new players, I think they had a really good time, and we got to see a new creature that they had never seen before, and quite a classic one as well. However, it did spend an entire session where we've just gone back and done the same thing, essentially. That's what they would have done to save the wagon had they got at night. So moving forward, I want to make more notes on possible outcomes or possible things that could happen, so that way, even though I'm not planning for them, they're in the back of my mind and I can improvise and bring them up should I want to. Plus, now I have to figure out, who's Ashton? If they go to Neverwinter, are they going to visit him? What's going to happen? Is he just a random person? How's he going to react to all of this? Is he going to come down and die on the way? I don't know. We'll have to find out next time. Check out these videos and subscribe so you don't miss next week's video, and I will see you in the next one.